What do you do when you're flying at redline and the wave is so strong it's about to push you into Class A? Join me on this winter wave flight to find out. Welcome back, pilots. We finally have a wave day in Northern California. The forecast looks outstanding, but this is prefrontal wave, which often includes an excess of cloud coverage. The big question on my mind is whether it's going to be too moist to go anywhere. I take a tow upwind from Hollister and head for this nearby wave bar. Here's the mountain range that's creating the wave. We're looking directly into the wind now, and that means we're in the lee of this mountain range where the wave typically sets up. After a few minutes of searching, I find the lift, and it takes me up like an elevator. I do a zigzag in the strongest lift, and look at the angle of the climb there. That was 8 knots at its highest. Just like that, I'm at 14,000 feet, well above the clouds. There are no classic lenticular clouds today, but the wave is well marked by the Foehn gaps in the lower cloud layer. The wind is blowing from the left. The cloudless area where the arrow is the Foehn gap, and the lift can be found just upwind of this bar of clouds. You can see the wave bars nicely in the satellite replay on WeGlide. After reaching 14,000 feet, I set off to the southeast to where the lift is forecast to be the best. In prefrontal wave conditions like this, you have to keep a close eye on these gaps in the clouds. They can close up quickly, leaving you trapped on top of a solid cloud layer. Fortunately, at this point, I'm high enough that there are some gaps downwind that I could escape to if necessary. I'm going to fly in a crosswind course now to the next good-looking wave bar. I pass through an area of weak lift, then reconnect with the good stuff over the Pinocha Valley. When I was looking at the forecast last night, I almost decided not to fly. It looked like there might be too much moisture around. But it's starting to become clear that the conditions are just right. There are just enough clouds to mark the wave clearly, and these long, unbroken wave bars are perfect for flying cross-country in wave. I'm going to fly along this wave bar on the left. The wind is coming from the right, and we are flying downwind of the San Benito mountain range, which is what's generating the lift in this area. I've come to the end of the wave bar, and now I've got a big decision to make. I know that I want to jump 1 or 2 bars upwind, because that's where the best lift is forecast to be. I initially choose this wave bar, where I plan to tank up on altitude before I make the jump upwind. But as I'm headed there, it suddenly shrinks, and I reevaluate my plan. I head back to where the lift was good, and quickly get to almost 18,000 feet. After some brief indecision, I hear on the radio that a friend is finding good lift on the wave bar upwind. Pushing into a 45-knot headwind costs a lot of altitude, and I've lost 5,000 feet by the time I reconnect with the next wave bar. Fortunately, the lift is strong, and I get back up to 17.5 without even having to turn. I'm ready to jump upwind again to the next wave bar. I want to choose a route where there'll be the least amount of sink to deal with, so I choose a small gap in the clouds, hoping that there'll be less sink there. Down I go again, losing another 5,000 feet. When I finally get upwind of the clouds, I find no lift. My plan is to tack crosswind to the wave bar behind the Tembler range, but it's pretty far, and the clouds along the way don't look encouraging. That's because I'm crossing a low spot in between 2 mountain ranges, and there won't be any wave there. I'm hoping I can at least find some zero sink so that I don't lose much altitude along the way. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. There was some weak lift, about 1 knot netto up, and I didn't lose much altitude crossing this gap. I make it to the Temblor range just below 13,000, and I'm back on the wave escalator. It is absolutely cooking here, and I'm quickly back up to 17.5. I push the nose down, and I'm having to fly at nearly VNE to avoid gaining any more altitude. If I pull up now, I'm going to go over 18,000 feet. My only option is to turn upwind out of the strongest lift. This stops my ascent, and I breathe a sigh of relief. However, the phone gap beneath me has gotten pretty narrow. The sky downwind is not as open as I'd like it to be, so I turn around. I drop below 17,000 feet and resolve to keep a larger margin between me and Class A. I get back to the beginning of the Temblors and realize it's still early in the day, so I turn back to run the good stuff again. The outside air temperature is 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and the cold is starting to get to me. I'm using electrically heated insoles in my boots, but they're not doing anything for my feet. My toes are absolutely frozen. I'm not willing to suffer just to do a boring yo-yo, so I turn back for home. When I got home, I discovered that my heated insoles are no longer functioning, so that explains why my feet were so cold. Now it's time to make the transition to a downwind wave bar. I'm headed for the one downwind of Black Mountain near Avenal. Downwind transitions in wave are much easier than upwind. You do have to go through some sink, but because you're not fighting a headwind, you lose a lot less altitude. I lose only about 2,000 feet in this transition, as opposed to the 5,000 feet I lost going upwind. The wave is still working well here, and it's another escalator ride up to 17,000. The wind is really strong here. My computer is showing 58 knots. The orange line on the screen is my ground track, and notice how there's almost a 90-degree angle between my heading and the ground track. I've slowed down so that my true airspeed matches the wind speed, and my ground speed becomes nearly 0. The glider is climbing straight up vertically. My route home is looking good. That same wave bar I rode here will take me back to Hollister. I just hang there in the air for a moment and enjoy the scenery. Right about here, my camera stopped recording for some reason, but I just flew back the way I came and landed uneventfully at Hollister. The wave forecast from SkySight was remarkably accurate today. The wind speed and direction stayed stable all afternoon, and so did the location of the wave. That made cross-country flight in wave fairly straightforward. It's usually not quite this easy. SkySight's 3D visualization of the wave is interesting. The taller the red shapes, the stronger the lift, and you can see from my ground track that I flew pretty much in the strongest stuff. The total distance was 574 kilometers. What an epic day. It was so good to be back in the air again after the long winter. Thanks for watching. See you next time.